Welcome back to the End of the Day show. It's Friday, August 2nd. I'm your host, Matt Parker, back here again, startup founder, CEO, and the runner and the manager of this media outlet. So thanks a lot for all the feedback. People following our YouTube, which you can find at FourInsights, youtube.com/FourInsights. You can also find us on Twitter at FourInsights as well as Instagram. But thanks a lot for following up, and thank you all for the subscriptions and the feedback as we grow. But definitely go check out the YouTube where the videos will be, and then also our Substack, which is still stretch4.substack.com. So today's show is quite the show. We're going to be getting into some AI drama. There's a lot of splintering happening within the AI ecosystem, which is generally right now the startup ecosystem, with these big tech acquisitions of these highly funded, highly venture-backed AI companies. So we're going to get into a few of those conversations. We're also going to talk about a failed startup incubator that had a lot of spicy tea related to it. The information put out a big news report yesterday on billionaire Eric Schmidt and his relationship with a young lady who he is assumedly no longer in a relationship with, and she had an incubator that has a lot going on. So a lot to talk about today on Friday, before you get into the weekend or head into the weekend, because I think that there will be a lot of things coming up over the next month as people start to filter back into work mode. Before we dive in, I want to talk about a new partner we're working with on the Stretch 4 or the FourInsights newsletter and media outlet. A quick word from Navan. Navan, that's spelled N-A-V-A-N. And as an entrepreneur, I know how crucial it is to manage travel and expenses. I've used Brex, I've used Ramp, I've used all of the new tools, and Navan is the only all-in-one solution that combines business travel booking with expense management. Their platform saves you time and money with policy controls, automated expense reports, and even rewards for cost-saving choices. Are you ready to streamline your business operations? Well, visit Navan today and tell them FourInsights sent you to get a special credit on your sign up and to get started with an exclusive offer. Thanks a lot for Navan for supporting independent media. So go support them as they build out the all-in-one solution for travel booking. So great. Yeah. As I spoke about, this week's show is really focused again on AI, or today's show is focused on AI. We've got the Google snatching up character AI. And we discuss, is that a win for the ecosystem? Obviously, it's a win for big tech. Then, speaking of Google, we have a story that was reported by the information on ex-Google CEO and his young entrepreneur former girlfriend and their $140 million venture that assumedly is going up in flames. And then lastly, we talk a bit about Amazon's latest power play with Adept AI. So moving in this story, and we've now seen 3 massively funded venture-backed companies essentially become acqui-hires from big tech without having to go through any kind of highly scrutinized merger and acquisition. And then last one on to this show, so let's get right into it. First, starting off with our first subject, we're going to talk about a company called Character AI and the acquisition by Google. It's not really technically an acquisition, but we got a lot of information today on this story and the founder who essentially was one of the original kind of creators of what we know today as modern AI, right? He worked at Google. He and his co-founder became a little bit frustrated with the bureaucracies there at a big company like Google in 2021, and they left to start this company called Character AI. And if you're not familiar with Character AI, think of it like this. It's essentially a chatbot that allows you to almost speak with people that are either from real life and you speak with their avatars. So, case in point, you could upload a pitch deck to Character AI. And I don't know if this feature exists, but it's essentially, you could ask it about your pitch deck and you could say, give me feedback on my pitch deck as if you were Elon Musk, or be Elon Musk and give me feedback on this pitch deck. And it would give you feedback. some of the usage numbers on this app for a consumer app are out of this world. I mean, people spend all day on the app. I remember when I first used the app, I was kind of like interrogating it as like, I'm going to a guy's weekend in Miami, right? And you ask it all the places you should go and all the new places to go and things to do. And so you can kind of create this like very, very like, quasi real world expectation and ask it questions, and it can just talk to you forever. So essentially what's happening with this deal, though, when we get into the economics of the breakdown, is Google is bringing back both the CEO and founder to the company. So these guys were, essentially they were away, they left Google. It was a bureaucratic thing. They wanted to go start this new company. And now Google is hiring them back. And so the reason that it's such a controversial thing is just yesterday, the information had reported that Facebook and Elon Musk's X.AI were interested in acquiring the company. So before either of those companies could make a true acquisition, Google steps in, agrees to pay a licensing fee for the chatbot maker Character.ai, and will hire its co-founders and many of its researchers. And so as we talked about earlier this week, even with Humane AI, the pen that didn't or doesn't seem to be working out, the biggest asset that a lot of these very well-funded venture-backed AI companies have is they have a large amount of highly talented researchers that these companies are competing for, right? These researchers are demanding anywhere from $500,000 to $2 million a year in annual salary and in compensation to go work at anybody from Google all the way to OpenAI. So most of the money that you see moving around Silicon Valley with these companies raising these large rounds, it's really just to pay these research analysts. And so with this agreement, Google brings back on the co-founders as well as their top founders. And when you get into the money of it, Google essentially, it looks like they're going to be paying around $88 per share in a licensing fee. And that's going to be about 2.5 times the value of what Character's Series A was in 2023. So not even, a little over a year from their Series A, their investors are doing a 2.5x. The founders now go back and work at Google with the researchers and become a part of like Google's internal AI programming. And it really gives you the question of, are these really big and good returns for venture capitalists? I mean, venture capitalists are the people that laud themselves as being the outlier return type people. They're looking for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50x on a couple companies per fund. But now we see that many of these AI companies look to just be acqui-hires at big tech. And while 2.5x on your return on your investment is not bad for a normal investor over a year's period, but for some of these venture funds, the numbers don't really make a lot of sense. And this is a widening trend that we see happening, as we'll talk about with another company, Adept. But would love to know, what do you think about this? What do you think about essentially big tech just buying up these highly funded AI companies? So moving on to the next story in this week's show, it's a little bit salacious. It's a little bit startup tea, but I'm going to do my best to cover it because, again, that's what I try to do on this show. So Eric Schmidt, speaking of Google, he's the former CEO of Google. He's worth well into the tens of billions of dollars. He's approaching 70 years old, but he's notoriously been known for having a very, very interesting relationship, to say the least. He's been married to his wife for 40 years, but he's been linked to many women over the years. And the information with an exclusive reported that this new investment vehicle that Eric Schmidt had created is crumbling. And it was started by Schmidt-Ritter, who initially started out to build this as a new type of incubator. The reason this story is relevant to me, Eric Schmidt is a very successful, very well-financed figure in Silicon Valley. I mean, he basically was the CEO of Google during the best years of Google, and Google obviously is one of the largest companies in the world. So he amassed a large amount of assets and capital during his time there, built up a very strong relationship with people like Barack Obama and many other very affluent and successful people. But it seems to be that his biggest downside has been his love affairs that he's mingled with his business. And so if you were to pitch Eric Schmidt, and this is the biggest piece for founders and people that are trying to rise up in Silicon Valley, if you pitch Endeavor Innovations, which is one of Eric Schmidt's businesses where he invests in startups, he has a large amount of people essentially making these decisions. It's a full-on family office that has hundreds of people that manages money and make all these investments. But it seems to be with the Steel Perlow drama with Schmidt-Ritter, there was some kind of love relationship that happened at some point. And it seems to be that, like, although I don't know much about this young lady's background, I mean, she wasn't necessarily very experienced in venture capital when she started this kind of YC competitor. But essentially the story is he invested $140 million of his own money into this entity. And this young lady, Schmidt-Ritter, started to really live the life. I mean, she was helping him make decisions on real estate across the country. She was paying herself about $1 million a year in annual compensation. The average employee at this company was making roughly $300,000 a year, and she was just making a lot of investments across crypto, fintech, AI. But it seems to have all come crashing down in a bad way, right? And that, like, she now is trying to essentially squander as much of the assets that she has. There was a company that she actually funded, an AI company that turns out to be doing okay, called Hebia, where she's literally trying to fight for having that equity in that company, because many of the other investments that she made, unfortunately, are falling apart. It is a very interesting lesson to learn, both from two sides of the coin, right? If you're a founder or an early stage person building your company, you have to understand that these personal relationships with people that are typically the ones investing the money, like an Eric Schmidt or any of his entities, you have to understand the personal relationships that are happening in the background and you're being in kind of consideration against these people, right? Like Schmidt-Ritter. It's a very hard conversation to have, but you have to realize that a lot of this stuff is going on and happening. And Silicon Valley is not a meritocracy. It's not a place where you can come and have the best ideas and the best companies and the best businesses and you will be successful, right? That's not how it works. There is a cohort of people who, I mean, if you consider Eric Schmidt to be, obviously he's good at something, but again, he was not necessarily the founder of Google, but he became a CEO and he led Google to its best run, one of the best runs in capitalism in the history of the world. So because of that, he now has a large amount of assets and a large amount of power that he's able to wield for his benefit, which in some cases might be, not the best way to do it. I mean, he's a 70-year-old man dating a 35-year-old woman and investing in her company, which is all perfectly legal until it doesn't work out and it goes bankrupt. And now we have Schmidt-Ritter doing a 2-hour sit down with information, belittling Eric Schmidt, when essentially, if it wasn't for that, she probably would have never got this opportunity. So this story and among other stories are stories that happen all the time in Silicon Valley. We rarely hear about them, but they are a reality of how this place works and how the ecosystem works. So that's a story to think about. Again, I'll continue to follow this story and provide any updates, but it does seem to be a very, very unfortunate situation for some people involved. And depending on who you think is unfortunate in this situation, it could be, I mean, in my personal opinion, it looks like this young lady tricked off the bag, right? She was given $140 million to invest. She was able to pay herself very well. And now it looks like this venture is not going to work out. And she's upset about that. And it's like, hey, I mean, you had a shot to maybe deliver the value and it didn't work out. And now you're kind of upset. And these are lessons to learn, but it's also a lesson for me to learn that it's not just about your product and your vision and who you are. It's also about who you know, and you might not get great opportunities because people have better relationships. So that's all on that, off my soapbox. On to the next story. As we talked about with Character AI, they were in a position to do a 2.5x the exit of what they raised at their Series A. Another company that did that is Adept AI, who essentially did the same model with Amazon. And it does bring up another question of the consolidation of AI. You do have to wonder, if you're building an AI company or you're considering building an AI company or you're using AI products, where's the real value going to go? It looks to me, and this is my perspective, all of this money is just going to float back to the large companies. If we listen to any earnings report this week from Facebook to Amazon, they were all talking about spending large amounts of capital on AI. And it looks like the way that these companies will make that money back is just to eventually acquire the talent that are building competitive solutions as startups and bring them back in-house and grow their market opportunity. I was just having a conversation with a friend today. She works at AWS, and just off the cup understanding, it really is just a massive race at the top, right? It's GCP, it's Google Cloud versus AWS. And Azure, because they have another, larger chip in that they own, and they're the largest investors in OpenAI, they have a lot of lead in the AI space. But really, a lot of the movement you see is just how can, Google Cloud do a little bit better than AWS, have a little bit more offering. Because what it comes down to is, if you're an early stage founder, you understand the credit game. If you're building a software solution, it's really like, who's going to give me the most credits and allow me to not have a bill for as long as I need until I'm actually making money. And so all of these companies seem to be in the same race to actually fight for the actual companies that are going to be able to grow and be sustainable and continue to allow them to grow their businesses. So whether it's Amazon with Adept or Google with Character, it's all a fight for talent and to position yourself against the other companies. So to close out today's show, thank you all for listening to the end of today's show. I am your host, Matt Parker. Try to do this show 4 times a week on YouTube as well as Substack. So please hit the subscribe button on both of those platforms. And I'm launching something here this fall that I'm really excited to start to talk about here a bit. But it is a boot camp of such related to venture capital and funding. So just like the story I mentioned with Eric Schmidt and Michelle Ritter, many stories are different, right? Many people fight tooth and nail to be able to raise even a couple $1 million for their startup. And so with this new program that I'm launching, I want to call founders and entrepreneurs, people that are considered to be starting companies, have already started companies, have already raised money or haven't raised money, to be a part of this new community that I'm launching. We plan for it to be immersive and intensive and give as much insights as possible, where you'll learn everything, from the basics, the high level stuff, crafting presentations, navigating term sheets, mentorships with founders who've already raised venture capital and are actively out building their companies, understanding and getting feedback on your presentations, as well as getting the insider insights into top VCs. So just thinking about the Eric Schmidt story, understanding how his family office actually works, how investments get made, where the capital gets invested, and where are the opportunities for founders to access this capital, access these types of relationships. So don't miss this opportunity. I'll have a link in the show notes. But for now, you can find out more about this information just by subscribing to the newsletter at FourInsights or search4.substack.com, as well as following the YouTube, as I'll be documenting a lot of the journey and building out this kind of mastermind bootcamp and working with founders, right? Already we have a few founders who have raised several millions of dollars in venture capital, signed up to do mentoring sessions, to help with pitch practice, to help understand the dynamics of product market fit and things like that. So I'm looking for a select few founders to join the program. So if you're interested, I'll give you some more information in this show notes. And also I have a Raising Venture Capital newsletter that goes out once a week. Again, that's raising-venture-capital.com. So check it out there. Lastly, another thing I wanted to call to mind, I put out a new free resource and I'm going to be working on another one, right? VCs for Kamala. is a list that I'm working through right now to see what venture capitalists that are supporting Kamala Harris are actually investing in founders, right? It's interesting just from a first look. There are a lot of venture capitalists on that list, but there are not as many of them are active. So I'm trying to essentially create a database of venture capitalists that are actively investing, particularly investing in founders that come from particular backgrounds that aren't as easy for them to raise money. So I do have a new resource that's listed. It's another link that I'll link to here in the show notes. And I have another one that's doing fairly well, my cold calling ebook on how to craft cold calls for outreach to raise capital. So those are all the things that I'm plugging here. Last but not least, always subscribe to FourInsights at youtube.com/FourInsights, as well as on Substack at stretch4.substack.com. That's all way over time today, but thank you all for listening to this show. Again, I'm trying to do this show Tuesday through Friday, so tell a friend to tell a friend about this show as we cover the inside baseball story and analysis of technology, venture capital, and startups. Thanks a lot. I'm your host, Matt Parker. Have a great weekend.